Is this recording? Let me just check. Yeah. Okay, so Sam, we're
You
here.
were talking. You wanted to talk about the my teacher who made an impact. My Talmudic teacher.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
Go.
Yeah, talk about it.
Well, when I was about 15 years old, this great rabbi, who was a Talmudic scholar, selected about 9 or 10 bright teenagers in the community to teach them Talmud. And he selected me for whatever reason. And I must tell you, out of the 10, I was the worst student. Because I wanted to play ball and do other things. And actually, I understand that of the 10 he selected, about 7 or 8 became rabbis. But although this man found me to be a poor student, he was very kind to me. And even when he was critical, he would be very kind. Like he used to say, when I recited a tract poorly, he says, in Yiddish, of course, he says, "You're reciting with broken teeth, you know."
Cute.
Or he used to shake his head and say, "So much not to know, it's incredible." But I loved him because he was a kind man, and I'll never forget him because he did make an impact on me, Jewishly. And I found out that a religious individual could be a very wonderful person, which was contrary to the way I found in my own family.
Okay, so you then in high school, so that was then after that, age 15, you were in high school
Then I
already.
went to high school, wrote a column for the school newspaper,
What high school did you go to?
Glenville High, and I wrote a column called Boren Sorin, and it was very well read by the students. So I was somewhat of a celebrity. Wasn't a terribly great student, fair student, but not real good or anything. Graduated, and then went to Ohio State University for 1 semester. And I just found out, I was trying to figure out when I met my sister recently, is how I paid for tuition, because although tuition was not very much in those days, I didn't have any money. And she told me my mother used to do night work as a seamstress so I could go to school. And yet, my parents sort of felt that the two worst things that could happen to me is to go to college and be in the army, because it would ruin me as a Jew.
Right, right.
So I went to school for 1 semester and then volunteered for the Army, and went into the Army in 1943. And finished basic training, was called into my commanding officer's office and was told that I was going to become a civil engineer. They were going to send me to school. And I protested, saying that Jews aren't engineers, not in those days. But he says that made no difference to him, and they sent me to Louisiana State University with about 2,000 or 3,000 other GIs, and went to school there for, I'd say, about 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 18 months. And the day we were supposed to graduate, we were told that they don't need engineers anymore, but they needed soldiers for the invasion of Europe. So we never even got our degrees officially. Maybe on record with the Army, I don't know. But in any event, I soon found myself in training again and became part of a infantry company of the 99th Infantry Division, and was sent to Europe, and ended up being in the Battle of the Bulge, of which was the biggest intelligence mistake Eisenhower and his group ever made.
Was that Patton?
Well, Patton became part, but they didn't think the Germans were massing up because it was bad weather. They thought the Germans were defeated. But the Germans attacked. It was around Christmas time, And fortunately, I got frozen feet, and they took me off the line, sent me to a hospital in Paris. And most of my company was destroyed. Of the 120 some, I think maybe a half a dozen survived.
Mm-hmm.
So some way I was lucky that I got frozen feet, which I still have symptoms of today.
Mm-hmm.
And then found myself on a ship called the Queen Mary, which was the great ship of its time, owned by England. And my bed was put in a swimming pool because they didn't have room, and they made a flat floor, and
Mm-hmm.
hundreds and hundreds of GIs stayed there and was brought to Halloran Hospital in New York. And the first visitor who came to visit me was my aunt, my mother's sister. And the first thing she did when she came into the ward, she ran over and picked up my blanket at my feet, because they all thought I'd lost my feet.
Mm-hmm.
She ran out and called my mother and says he's got feet. So that was my experience. And
How long were you in the military total?
in the war,
Military.
well, from the beginning of 1943 to September 11th, 1945. And when I got out of the Army on September the 11th, isn't that interesting, the September 11th date of what happened here
Mm-hmm.
with our bombing of our tower? I was at undergraduate school 9 days later at Western Reserve University, and I got my degree 2 years later because I had credits from before. And another person made a great impact on me, which, I don't know, my brother claims I became interested in music, but a guy by the name of Carl Friedman, professor, had a class, appreciation and music appreciation, of which they were all GIs.
Mm.
And I really learned a lot and loved music from that point on.
Mm.
And so he made a tremendous impact. I then worked for a year or two, and then went to graduate school.
Oh, wait a second. Okay. Let's stop there. Let's take a break because you didn't.
Yeah.
Let's get into the next phase would be mom. How you met mom.
Oh,
Okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
I got to take a break, so we'll come back. End of section.